welcome to my FlossTube channel. I'm Farish, and I am glad once again that we get to spend this time together. I'm going to start out with a little bit of a storage solution, a creative way of kind of keeping a handle on all those beautiful needle minders that you have collected. This is something my daughter Elizabeth made some time ago, just as sort of a magnetic bulletin board. And I have taken it over to hold on to my needle minders. Now I'm kind of late coming into the game with needle minders, because when you stitch in hand, as I do, needle minders, oops, that was loud. Needle minders need to be tiny and lightweight. That's probably the only real disadvantage I find in stitching in hand, is that you don't get to enjoy these gorgeous needle minders that are out there. I love the fact that a lot of people will match the theme of what they're stitching to their needle minder. I think that that's just it's clever, and it's just kind of a fun way to express yourself. So that said, I got quite a collection of them when I was at Stitch North, and realized when I started pulling them all together that I had quite a nice assortment. So the tip here in making something like this, and by the way, this just came from the dollar store, is to make sure it's not aluminum, because then your magnets won't stick. The other tip that I want to share with you is actually how to put them on the board. When you your needle minder has really two magnets. The pretty part has a magnet to it, and then there's a second magnet that goes behind your fabric. So it's like a sandwich. You've got your needle minder and your fabric, and then the other magnet. So those magnets are pretty strong. So unless you've got something between the two of them, sometimes they're kind of hard to separate. So what I did here, let me just take this one off, was I put a piece of cardboard. I just cut, well, it's not even cardboard, it's like cardstock. As you can see, this is a really strong magnet. And by putting that, well, that's never happened before. Okay. That brings to mind one of the things with these magnets is they are brittle and they will break, as you just saw. And that was just, it broke just because it was snapping. These are really, really tight magnets. Okay. All right. That really illustrated my point, but I'll set that one aside. Let's pick up a different one. This is one of the lightweight ones that works well with my stitching in hand. And as you can see, I just have a circle of cardstock there that I put between the two magnets, so it's really easy to separate. So that kind of illustrated two things about needle minders. Okay, so here's another one, and this is just kind of a medium-sized magnet. And again, just have a circle of cardstock behind it. These are actually the circles that I had to punch out when I made the thread drops to go with the two turtle design. So anyway, oh, and what she's done here is this is just a piece of just colorful cardstock that she glued down to the cookie tray, and I love how she made this little flower thing. She punched out two flower shaped things and kind of beat them up a little bit and added a button there just to make it pretty. And oh, and then up here, if you want to hang it up, you can punch these holes. I mean, you have to kind of have a really, really strong punch, or just using a nail and put a piece of wood behind it and punch it with the nail. That will work too. But so she's just attached this piece of ribbon there. So right now I just have mine propped up on a shelf. I don't have it hanging up. Also be careful where you put it down, because I set it on top of a pair of scissors and now the scissors are stuck to the back of it. So I'll have to get another magnet to add to this one that Suzanne gave me. I'll fix that later. Okay, what's up next? Oh, speaking of the two turtle design of mine, I got a wonderful email from a woman named Lee who sent me this photo of her completed sampler. And what I want to point out about this one is that she really personalized it by replacing the image of the little tiny turtle with a couple of seashells that she got from a different chart. Lee went on to explain that she is an avid shell collector, and so by adding the little cluster of shells, she really made it her own. And I applaud that type of creativity and certainly encourage it. So I want to thank Lee for sending that in to me. It always gives me a real thrill to see what people are actually doing with some of my designs. This week I've been working on a couple of projects that have to do with some of our upcoming cruises. We always put together a pretty nice swag bag, and so I have been ordering some things that are personalized with the name of our cruises and whatnot on them. And it brings to mind some of the things we've been talking about on the subject of color. There is a color system called PMS, and it stands for Pantone Matching System. And this is a Pantone book. They are frankly expensive, but they have like every color you can imagine in the rainbow. And for somebody who orders items that need to be silk screened or a company logo or whatever added to it, to get the exact color that you want, you need to specify a PMS color. And it's a pretty universal system. It's used worldwide. And where it connects back to needlework, besides the fact that we were ordering swag for one of our stitching cruises, is this. As I said, these are expensive. So to kind of, avoid buying one, I decided I would just go online, and there are a couple of websites where they have every PMS color, and you can scroll through until you find the exact shade you wanted. So for example, I was looking for sort of that blue-green that kind of is reminiscent of what we think of sea glass. And so I found that color and was ready to order it. And then I thought, I'm going to look at the same website on a different computer. And my gosh, the color difference was incredible. On the first computer, it was exactly the color I wanted. On the second computer, same PMS number, it was like a bright blue, like a sky blue. It was not a blue-green at all. So what this reminded me of is when designers design cross-stitch using software on their laptop, they are seeing an image that may or may not match the DMC colors if they're designing to DMC, or in my case, designing to Cosmo. And again, that is why I am very skeptical of designers, and it's sort of a new trend, who design beautiful things and sell it without ever stitching it, because they are using the colors they are seeing on their screen. They are not necessarily seeing the colors that as they're going to look when they're stitched. So I just throw that out as a caution to you, that when you are shopping, I want you to be a good consumer. So when you are shopping for a cross-stitch design and you are looking at it on screen and it's not ever been stitched, just beware that it may not turn out that way. So just keep that in mind. And of course, after that experience, I had to bite the bullet and buy myself a PMS book. But I'll put it to good use, so I'm happy with it. This seemed to be a week where I would have these experiences that were not necessarily needlework related, that I immediately could turn it around and say, how does this apply to my needlework? And in reading a novel, I came across this old saying, and that is, comparison is the thief of joy. And when that sunk in, I realized really how true that is. when we start comparing ourselves to other people, we can suck the joy right out of whatever it is that we're doing, whether it's needlework or cooking or gardening or picking out the perfect outfit to wear or whatever. Just take a breath when you find yourself comparing yourself to other people, because what you're really doing is robbing yourself of your own personal joy. So again, just be aware when you are on Facebook and there are people who will post things like, I see all these posts and people stitch so much faster than I do, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And I want to say to that person, you're not doing anything wrong. You know, you are stitching at the rate that you can stitch and enjoy your craft. And that's the beginning and the end of the story. It does not matter what somebody else is doing. You are enjoying your leisure time activity with a needle in your hand and fabric in your hand. And don't weaken your joy by comparing yourself to other people. Have you ever wondered what 500 skeins of Cosmo floss looks like? I had a peek at that this week when I was putting together complete assortments for my Etsy store. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about it, you know, coming back to that joy word, is that it allowed me to see how colors play with each other that I never thought about combining in any sort of a color scheme. So it really opened up my viewpoint of how to use color. And one of the things I'm going to do sometime very soon is to get out all 500 skeins and just lay them out on a white surface so that they're not being impacted by other colors around them, and see how they look together. And I'll be sharing some of that with you in future episodes, because I'm really looking forward to seeing the whole range in one field of view, which I don't usually do. I don't think very many of us have that opportunity. Even if you're in a store where they have the full range of DMC, for example, they're in little drawers or in little sections on a tray, and you're not able to really just kind of move them around like sort of like chess pieces on a board. And that's what I'm going to be doing. So I'll share some of that journey with you. I got an interesting question from a stitcher named Rita. Let me read her question to you. She started out with, I have just started your video series and I've already learned several tips. I've cross-stitched for over 40 years and now only stitch on Aida due to eyesight. I love samplers and wonder if anyone does them on Aida. Well, Rita, let me tell you what. You absolutely can do a sampler on Aida. I think, again, maybe the theme today is joy in our stitching, but if what you enjoy stitching is Aida, and you also want to stitch a sampler, then absolutely those two can be combined. In fact, some of you may remember I've told this story in an earlier episode of my very, very first published cross-stitch design was Janet Irving. And at that time, everybody stitched on Aida, nobody stitched on linen. And so I was advised to skip linen and produce the sampler on Aida and publish that way, and I did. And it turned out well. So with that in mind, I wouldn't even hesitate to stitch an authentic sampler reproduction on Aida if that's what brings you joy. The only caution is that not all stitches can be done easily or well on Aida. Can you do every single stitch on Aida? Yes, but it's a struggle. Aida is woven in such a way that lends itself to stitching in squares and not necessarily dividing that square up into parts like you would with linen. So for example, a rice stitch, can it be done on Aida, I'm going to say yes right here, because otherwise somebody will write to me and say, well, I've done a right stitch on Aida. You can do it, but it is a struggle. So here are some of the stitches that you can do easily on Aida. Herringbone, Algerian eyelet, which is the 8-legged eyelet. You can do the fly stitch, Smyrna cross, the 4-sided stitch, not as a pulled stitch, but just as a 4-sided stitch. All of these are stitches that appear from time to time in samplers that can be done on Aida. So when you're shopping for a sampler to stitch on Aida, just look through the directions and see if there are any stitches that have to be done on linen, or if it includes, say, over 1 stitches. Then in that case, I would just back away from that, because I think that the struggle of doing it well and executing pretty stitches will just sort of, I just think it would just be so hard. I think it would just take away from your joy. And given the fact that there are so many incredible reproduction samplers out there, it would be easy to find one that was either completely cross-stitch or only included the sort of stitches that I'm describing here. So yes, go out there and stitch yourself a sampler on Aida and enjoy it. 2 big things coming up in the next couple of weeks here. First, I'll tell you that on July 8th is when we're going to open registration for the very first FlossTube at Sea cruise. This one's going to be a little bit different from our usual cruises in that instead of the conference center on the cruise ship being used for small classes, instead we will combine the 2 sections into one big room and have enough space for everyone to be seated at any given time, just to come in and just enjoy the day to stitch. We also will only have 1 excursion, and that will be on St. Kitts. We are going to go to Carabel, where you can see these beautiful batik fabrics and even try your hand at it. Other than that, I think the cruise will be very, very similar to what anybody's used to if they've come on our cruises before. We are very strong on hospitality. We're not a travel agent. We're not just booking a cruise for you and then, getting you on board and then you don't see us again till the end of the cruise. Instead, we are there interacting with people every day, doing what we can to make sure that people will have a good time. And I just find that needleworkers are just the friendliest people in the whole wide world. And even somebody who's coming by themselves will only be by themselves if they want to be. I mean, you come up to a group of people who are stitching, and the icebreaker type questions come so easily. What are you stitching? Or who's the designer of that? Or what fabric is that? These are questions we ask each other all the time without even thinking about it. And as soon as that person has answered your question, a conversation has started and you have made a new friend. So we're gearing up for that, and I will just give you a hint right now. We never know what to expect when registration opens. We've never had a cruise sell out the first day, but we've come pretty close a couple of times. So if you are really keen to come on this cruise, I really want to encourage you to get on the Stitchers Escapes mailing list. Go to stitchersescapes.com, go to the contact us page, and you just have to scroll down just a little bit, and there'll be a place to put in your name and your email address. And I think we asked a question about what type of emails you want to get from us. And what that will get for you is on July 8th, as soon as registration has opened, we will send out an email to everybody on that list. So keep that in mind. And so as far as tips on how to get in when there's a crush like that, because somebody just sent me an email just today asking me if there were any tips or whatever. What I would say is right now it's scheduled to start at 11 o'clock on July 8th. Now, we've never had any kind of a major glitch, but we send out that email as soon as registration, as soon as we have everything set up, just in case something goes weird. So what I would say is that day, about maybe, 5 or 10 minutes before 11, that's Eastern time, log on to your email and just keep hitting your refresh button until that email comes through from us. And when it does, it will have a link to the registration form. And all the questions we're going to ask you are questions you'll have to answer to: your name, your address, your phone number. If you're going to have a roommate, who's your roommate? We will ask you, for example, are you paying for just yourself or paying for yourself and your roommate? What kind of cabin do you want? So if you are going to have a roommate, have a conversation with them ahead of time as far as what type of cabin you want. So that's basically it. It will ask if you have a passport or remind you need a passport, but you don't need your passport number at that point. At least I don't think you do. I better check with my registration guru, who is my daughter, Catherine, and if I am wrong about that, I will put a note in the episode description. So the other big news I have is that I have to undergo hand surgery. Yeah, kind of a big thing for somebody who loves needlework as much as I do. And even if it was just my pastime and not the way I make a living, it would be kind of a big deal. I have very severe arthritis. It's gotten to the point where the pain is such that it has to be done. We discovered I'm not a good candidate for cortisone shots. So we tried that, and we just have to kind of skip that and just go right to the surgery point. So that's going to be June 28th. So I'll probably have one more FlossTube episode before I have that surgery. I might get the time to do a second one, just to kind of have it banked and then can just upload it. So I'm not worried about it. I mean, surgery is surgery. All surgery is serious, but I have great faith in my doctor, and I know that I will, no pun intended, be in good hands. And ultimately, just to give you the full scope of things, I will need to have the surgery on both hands. Now, for practical reasons, we're going to do one at a time. I joke that we're going to start with the left so that he can practice on the left before he does the right. And I don't know how much time I'll have in between the two, certainly enough to recover. And of course, the tricky thing is trying to schedule it in such a way that I can have the surgery and fully recover before I have to do any kind of teaching that I've already contracted for. So that's kind of that's a lot of personal information, but I wanted to kind of give you a heads up, since it will probably affect how much stitching I get done in the next 6 weeks. So once we discovered that I needed to have the surgery, I have been going full steam ahead, trying to get everything I need to do that requires both hands for the next couple of months. I've been trying to compress it and get it done in 2 weeks. So that's been a challenge, but so far so good. And yeah, I've said this before, getting old is not for sissies. And I'm just glad that we have the kind of medical help that we have available to us, that I can have the surgery, and I'm sure that I will be back to stitching in hand in no time at all. And I'm certainly glad that I have my what I call a fanny hoop that you It's a hoop. I've shown it to you before, and maybe I'll get it out next week. But it comes on a stand, and you basically slip it under your leg so that it's anchored, and so you can stitch with one hand. So yeah, so that's what's ahead for me. But I expect to be back here next week. Between now and then, stitch happy, stay safe, and I'll see you later.